This is Jennifer Gonzalez welcoming you to episode 172 of the Cult of Pedagogy podcast. In this episode, we're going to explore ways we can help students meet their needs at the fourth tier of Maslow's hierarchy, the esteem level. I want you to think for a minute about a spitball. A pea-sized ball of paper wadded up, maybe even inserted into a drinking straw, and then shot at an unsuspecting student in some classroom on any day in history. It usually has the intended effect of annoying the target student, and if the kid doing the shooting is caught, often results in a reprimand of some kind. It also satisfies a more important goal. It gets that kid attention. One phrase I hear teachers use a lot when they talk about problems with classroom management is attention-seeking behavior. Our students do things that interrupt instruction, distract their classmates, or at a more serious level, even end up causing harm to themselves or others. We punish, we yell, we write names on the board, pull students into the hall, call parents, and these responses kind of work to reduce some of these behaviors. But if we could actually get to the root of why students do these things, beyond the simple and dismissive explanation of they are just trying to get attention, we might be able to eliminate even more of them. It turns out the root might be found on the fourth tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. My guest today, educator and author Connie Hamilton, is exceptionally good at figuring out how small moments in the classroom, little shifts we make in the way we interact with our students, can make huge differences in the quality of their learning. This is Connie's second time on the podcast. In episode 141, she talked about how we can get our students to stop saying, "I don't know," and get more specific about their points of confusion. Today, we're going to look at how student needs on Maslow's fourth tier explain their attention-seeking behavior, or sometimes the things they avoid doing, and what we can do as educators to help them meet those needs in healthy, productive ways. Before we start, I would like to thank Studio for sponsoring this episode. Today by Studio is a free add-on to Google Classroom, which allows students to track and plan all of their classwork with tools that allow students to estimate how much time a task will take and divide larger tasks into smaller ones. Teachers can also track how each student is handling their workload over time. This is a valuable tool to share with parents during parent-teacher meetings to help each student plan their work and pace themselves for longer-term projects. Coaching students on being better organized has a direct impact on their grades as well as their long-term success, and together we can make a difference. Today is free for individual teachers. School and district plans come with added features like timetable import, student-entered tasks, and LMS integrations. Visit studio.co/pedagogy to create your free account now and get your students planning. That's studio.co/pedagogy. Support also comes from Scholastic Scope magazine. Scholastic Scope is a powerful middle school resource that builds stronger, more engaged readers and writers. All year long, your class receives fresh ELA content in the format of your choice, print, digital, or both. Your students will love reading Scope's thrilling stories, discovering new genres, watching amazing videos, and writing about everything they've learned. And you'll love that every story and activity builds core ELA skills, from summarizing to synthesizing. Visit scholastic.com/scope to learn more and use code 2021 to save 20%. Finally, if you're looking for some high-impact PD that won't take a lot of time, check out my mini course, 4 Laws of Learning and How to Obey Them. In education, new ideas, tools, and strategies are coming at you all the time. On top of that, changing circumstances force you to make adjustments to the way you normally do things. With all of this spinning around you, it can be hard to find a clear path. What you need is a compass, a set of principles you can return to again and again when you start to feel like you're losing your way. This mini course is that compass, a set of 4 laws for planning instruction, just instruction. Yes, many other factors influence the quality of a student's education, but when it comes to instructional planning, what you do in that block of time that's set aside for actual pedagogy, following these principles produces the most powerful learning. In just about 2 hours, this short course teaches you the laws through videos, guided notes, and quick module quizzes to check your understanding. To learn more about the course, visit cultofpedagogy.com/laws and use the code LISTENER at checkout to take $5 off the course tuition. That's cultofpedagogy.com/laws. Now here's my interview with Connie Hamilton about Maslow's fourth tier. Hey, Connie, welcome back.
Thank you.
I was looking back to see what episode you appeared on last time, and it was 141, I think. But I always think of your episode and blog post as the last non-COVID related thing I did. Like it was the last thing I published before I had to really start looking at pandemic related things. So for some reason, there's a little bookmark on your.
Isn't it funny? I feel like everything is forever going to be bookmarked as pre and post COVID.
Yes, yes. It was the last thing I put out there that had nothing at all to do with it. So you are a repeat guest here. And so last time we talked about handling the issue of students saying, I don't know all the time in the classroom. And this time we are going to talk about the fourth tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So before we get into it, just tell us, for people who are brand new to the podcast, remind us of who you are and what you do in education.
I have been the gamut of roles within education. I was an elementary teacher, a secondary teacher, I was a principal, a curriculum director, and you and I have in common that we both have written hack learning books.
Mm-hmm.
And since writing Hacking Questions, I have kind of veered off from the public education directly and am now working with small groups of teachers to coach and help them really refine their craft. So I'm really fortunate to be living my dream.
That sounds really great. It sounds really satisfying.
It is.
So you came to me a little while ago with this thing that had been really you kind of had an epiphany basically about Maslow. And so why don't I just sort of hand the mic over to you and you tell me a little bit about how you kind of came to this realization that this is something teachers really needed to pay attention to.
Well, you kind of built a segue right into it because it really was looking at COVID. Obviously, everyone was tuned into students' social and emotional needs. And so I was kind of going back to the basics of, okay, what are some of the things that are foundational beliefs and proven theories that we all have learned about, and how can I dig into those a little deeper? And so I stumbled upon Maslow and the hierarchy of needs and the five tiers of physiological safety, love and belonging, esteem, and self actualization. And as I was reading a bit more about that, I discovered that Maslow actually has two categories within those five levels of deficiency needs and growth needs. And it was really that aha for me when I looked at esteem as a deficiency need, because I always thought esteem is like, oh, this is how kids feel about themselves and they'll show off to improve their friends just to get attention. And I didn't necessarily see that as, ooh, they really have a hole inside of them that
Mm,
they're seeking to fulfill rather than, oh, I'm just trying to get a good laugh.
right, right.
So that was a big aha.
Yeah. So why don't we start there? Like, talk to me, because I had never heard the term, that even understood that Maslow's hierarchy was actually divided into deficiency versus growth needs. My basic understanding of Maslow has always been, if a person's basic sort of like physical needs, if they're hungry, like we say it all the time in education, Maslow before Bloom's, like we can't
Hmm.
teach them content if they're sitting there hungry or if they're feeling worried about their safety. But those third and fourth tiers got a little blurry for me because I just kind of took it big picture wise.
Hmm.
And so I never even got to the point of understanding that there's like a difference. So what is the difference between a deficiency need and a growth need?
So I think what you just said
Mm-hmm.
really does a nice job of defining the deficiency needs. Kids aren't going to be able to concentrate if they're hungry or if they're
Mm-hmm.
tired or if they're worried about a bully in between classes or whatnot. They
Mm-hmm.
just aren't going to be able to concentrate. And I think most of us educators have a really good grasp on those two lower tiers.
Mm-hmm.
So deficiency needs are vacancies essentially that give you a negative feeling or a negative emotion if they aren't fulfilled.
Okay.
And so it doesn't have a positive effect on the students. So, for example, if I'm hungry, I'm going to feel, if I haven't eaten, I'm going to feel hungry. And, but if I have eaten, I don't get any like happy juice out of that. I just don't feel hungry anymore. So
Right.
that hunger feeling that's the negative emotion or the negative feeling that you have. So the deficiency needs all fit in that category. So while we understand sleep, shelter, safety, hunger, those kinds of things, also love and belonging and esteem also fits into that category.
Mm-hmm.
So if students are not feeling as though their esteem needs are met, whether they're conscious about it or not,
Mm-hmm.
they will seek to have those fulfilled to avoid those negative feelings that they get by having that void.
Got it. So it's the absence of it actually creates a problem.
Exactly.
Whereas self-actualization is the only thing in that pyramid that is qualified as a growth need.
Yes,
And that's
you
almost like
actually
a
get the
nice to
happy.
have. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it has a positive effect versus it just doesn't have a negative effect.
If
So,
it's missing, it's just missing. It doesn't, yet there's no detriment there.
exactly.
Okay. And so what you then sort of discovered, and you actually sort of like diced it down a little tighter, that this esteem need even has some more stuff to it that, well, we're going to get to that in a minute, but the first thing I thought we were going to do is just sort of look at the ways that the first three tiers impact school, how they play out in a school setting, just to sort of make sure that everybody understands we're not talking about those today. We're going to just
Right.
going to quickly review those and then really zero in on the esteem level and how what it looks like in the classroom when a student is lacking it, and then how we can actually make some teacher moves to help them actually meet those needs in a way that's healthy and productive and not destructive.
Yes. So I
Okay.
think we all have a pretty good grasp on the physiological needs, as we mentioned. That's air,
Mhm.
food, clothing, warmth, sleep.
Mhm.
And then the safety needs, those are things like law and order, protection from shelter, freedom from fear, making sure that you're safe from the elements. This is also where stability comes into play. So established routines can be a really important way to fulfill the safety needs.
Okay.
Love and belonging is sort of that this is where I fit in the world and
Mhm.
I'm wanted and I'm loved.
Mhm.
So programs like capturing kids' hearts and looking at restorative practices, those kinds of initiatives and focuses that schools have help to really support that tier of love and belonging because it tells kids you are wanted, you are appreciated, you are welcomed, etc.
Okay.
So that fourth tier of esteem, it still fits into that deficiency rather,
Mm.
category. But the esteem is about how students feel about themselves. And it's based on a couple of different things. It's based on their own accomplishments and the retrospect that they have about the achievements that they've had, the challenges that they've overcome. This is where growth mindset would
Mm.
definitely come into play. But interestingly, as well, is there's another category within esteem. So you have self esteem,
Mhm.
but then there's another category within the esteem tier that is esteem from others.
Okay.
And for children and adolescents, this is their status. This is what kind of prestige they have, their popularity. This is
Mm.
the reputation that they have within their peer groups and,
Mhm.
and within their relationships that they have with family and adults as well. So the big aha that I had was all of these years I thought, why are kids acting this way when I know they know better. I
Mm,
know their moral self doesn't believe that this is a good way to act. Why are they
yeah.
making fun of student A just so student B will accept them?
Yeah.
And it
Yep.
all just kind of came back to me like, oh my goodness, I really thought that they were getting fulfillment and excitement and some kind of happy endorphins from that. But really, Maslow suggests they're just trying to subside the negative emotions, the anxiety that they feel
Mm,
by not having that popularity, reputation, prestige, and status of their peers.
wow. And one of the and by the way, for anybody listening, everything that we're talking about, you have actually compiled into a really nice blog post with diagrams and everything. And so they should go over and read that too. But one of the things that you talked about in there is that these two sides, the self-esteem and then the esteem that you get from others, that second part is really key to getting the first part. That it's got a higher priority for children and adolescents, and that
Right.
they desire that respect before they can actually develop the true self-esteem.
Exactly. And it makes sense if you think about it, as students are really kind of discovering who they are and how they fit in the world, they don't have that sense of self clearly established as many of us adults do, hopefully.
Yeah.
and and so they depend on how others view them to help them to frame their view of themselves. And so it really isn't this chicken and an egg which comes first. There are definitely a lot of experts out there that claim that it is this esteem from others that establishes how adolescents and children think about their own self esteem. So the esteem from others actually has a greater weight in that overall category of esteem in general.
Mm. It's sort of reminding me of certain students that I had who I knew were either very smart or very, very talented, maybe with like with a musical instrument or something, for example, something that wasn't one of the cool things to do, but they could really play a mean violin, but they would still come across to everyone as just these incredibly shy, unconfident people. And I would be looking at sort of the academic work that they did. And and it was like, you're so amazing, but socially they didn't maybe feel that. And
Hmm.
so they really kind of, pulled themselves into a corner a lot of times.
Sure. And even that the identity that they have as a student. So depending on what kind of peer acceptance that they're trying to obtain, if getting good grades and performing well and having right answers gets them the respect of their peers, then they're going to have that. However,
Mm.
if the opposite is true,
Hmm.
students will very often try to hide their intelligence or downplay their success
Yes.
because they don't want to have that negative perspective
I
from the
saw
peers
that.
that they're trying so hard to
Yes.
impress.
I'm thinking of one specific kid who I complimented him on his writing one time, and he could not have stared harder daggers at me. And I thought, what did I do? And he was like, dude, you're ruining my reputation right now. I'm so sorry. I will never do it again. He was the seventh grader. He was like, we're not doing that here.
Right, and you know what's interesting about that is that our gut is to go to the student and say, "You should be proud of yourself,
Right.
and this is a great thing, and you should show it off, and why do you care what other people think about them?"
Yeah.
And so our natural go-to way to support students who are showing those behaviors is to try to minimize their need, which is a deficit need,
Yeah.
of respect from others,
Uh
and
huh.
we just cannot do that. It's like saying, "Don't be hungry."
Right. 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 So a lot of us have been we see this need, but we aren't handling it in a way that's going to actually fix it.
Right.
Another thing that you talk about is just like giving, like, the whole participation trophy movement,
Mm.
basically, over the past, say, 20 years, that lots and lots of people are critical of because everybody sort of sees through it. But this, like, everybody's great all the time and everybody should just believe in themselves. You talk a little bit about that kind of the thing too.
Hmm. Yeah, and that comes with the really subtle nuance difference between confidence and esteem. And thank you for the recommendation of that amazing book, The Confidence Code, because it really was it was a really good read.
Yeah.
And what they support, Kay and Shipman are the authors of that book, and what they say so clearly and well is that you can't fake confidence,
Mm,
because as an individual, if you had to work hard in order to earn something, or if it was just handed to you, or if you cheated to get it.
mm,
Other people may not know if you took a shortcut or, went around, but you know that. And so, because esteem is internal, it's how you think about yourself. You can't fake it to yourself. And other people giving you superficial praise and accolades and that type of thing, if the receiver of that doesn't feel that they are earned, deserved, and that they have a high level of clout, then it doesn't do anything to impact confidence or esteem.
mm. So what can we do in this blog post? You actually share three specific strategies that teachers can apply in the classroom that can really help build true esteem, and this is all built around the idea of esteem from others, or that feeling of
Hmm.
esteem from others, which will then in turn boost their actual self-esteem. So let's go through these.
Sure thing. And I think the first thing is really just thinking about when those moments happen, to make sure that we keep in mind that, okay, a deficit need is showing its space. And
Yes.
so, how am I going to address this? Because the student isn't doing this just to make themselves happy. They're doing it because they have some kind of negativity inside them that they're trying to subside.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point because probably almost every person I've ever worked with as a teacher has used that phrase, attention seeking behavior.
Hmm.
And I know we've all thought it, and so it's to try to make just that mind shift
Hmm.
is probably, yeah, it's a really important first step. Okay.
Right. So the first one is just to pave the way to give kids a way to opt out. So if they're responding academically, we often give them a it's 100% this or it's 100% that. And so when students give an answer, they're expected to sort of be certain or to commit to a response
Hmm.
completely. So if we help students by giving them some sentence stems that allow
Hmm.
them to under commit to their responses, and for those people who have listened to the podcast that we did on IDK and that post,
Hmm.
these really tie nicely together, because qualifying and quantifying are two different ways that you can kind of undercommit. So things like, well, I know it's not this because, or
Hmm.
I even just having students say blatantly, I'm not committed to this answer.
Right. Right. I like that.
Or I might change my mind later.
Yeah.
So giving them permission and even encouraging them to qualify those responses, or even saying like, hey, I'm 75% sure.
Right.
So if a student is, and I think I may have said this before, if a student's 40% sure that they're right and they turn
Yeah.
out to be wrong, then they
Yeah.
were 60% sure that they were wrong and they were right that they
Right.
were wrong, right?
Right. I'm also trying, I mean, I feel like there is so much agency that you're handing to them by
Hmm.
giving them those kinds of phrases, because I can hear somebody in a graduate program using a phrase like this, an adult using it, but it's hard to picture, say, a 13-year-old unless they've been taught
Hmm.
that it's okay in this classroom culture to do this, and I'm encouraging you to do it, and get everybody used to using phrases like that. That stuff will bleed even out of the classroom into
Oh, of
just their
course.
regular conversations.
And it's completely socially acceptable as adults. We do it
Yes.
all the time.
Yes.
Hmm.
And I'm also a huge fan of this because I just did a post a couple months ago about the gray area, and how irritated I get with people who act like they're 100% sure of everything all the time, and they just seem like blowhards to me. So
Right?
I feel like phrases like this just allow for, I'm still learning about this. And so, yeah.
Exactly. Without resorting to I don't know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the first one, is giving them methods for actually kind of opting out or under committing to contributions that they make in the classroom or answers that they give.
Right. And then the second one is being really attentive to what's happening in your classroom. And so if you are seeing that a student has some esteem needs that need to be fulfilled, and you're not seeing an organic opportunity to fulfill
Mm.
those, you
Mhm.
can kind of create them by soliciting attention and soliciting responses. So things like, um, who do you want to honor today? Or who agrees with so and so?
Mhm.
And then when people do agree, just sort of pointing that out. One of the things that I love to do is when a student is speaking and another student says, "Oh,
Mm.
I get it."
Mhm.
I would like to stop the presses. Did everyone just hear that? Because that is the sound of cognitive light bulbs being turned on, and buddy, you turned them on.
Nice. Great. I love that. Okay. So just stopping for a second and pointing out what's happening in the room. Like, other people are respecting what you're saying. I think they're getting
Exactly.
something.
So you can
Yes.
solicit those responses, and
Okay.
then once they do occur, either through a little nudging on your part or organically, then
Mhm.
just pausing for a moment to say, listen to what just happened, or just label it, narrate it, and
Yeah.
then move on.
Yeah, yeah. I'm seeing something else on this list too, which I like this one, so I'm going to just read it. It says, "How many of you had the same thought as this student here?" Which I think is great, because I think I know a lot of times if I ask a question, if I'm a student, I'm always hoping, I'm assuming there's got to be other people who have the same question. So I'm going to put my hand up and ask it. And so doing something like that, especially as a teacher, if you're pretty sure that it's a common, question, that
Mhm.
can boost everybody's confidence, honestly, including the person who just spoke.
Well, and the opposite is true too. Of course, I love to talk about questions, but even how many of you have that same question? And
Mm,
so that also honors the fact that students are inquiring and seeking more information, and you're not the only one that has that wondering.
yeah, yeah, that would further boost the confidence of the
Hmm.
person who actually decided to ask the question, or share the thought to
Hmm.
try that again sometime. So, what is the third one?
So the third one is just trying to create opportunities for these peer interactions to happen organically by the way that you structure your classroom. So a lot of it is the culture that you have in your classroom,
Mm,
and how you treat students and how you expect students to treat one another, what you tolerate, what you don't tolerate. So things like maybe having some kind of a visual compliment board where students can compliment one another, or you can compliment them, or maybe at the very beginning of class, if you have a moment where you're sharing good news, maybe that also could be flipped into, do you have a compliment, or do you want to share some gratitude with a peer or class member, or something like that.
mm,
So just encouraging moments. They don't have to take a very long time, but encouraging time for students to use their own words and language to compliment one another and support one another. Um, Also, in thinking about how you group students, and this be a whole nother podcast, so I won't go into too much detail, but if you are selecting collaborative groups, and you one of your main goals is to make sure that the esteem is honored of the students in your classroom, then you really want to make sure that you have groups that have mixed strengths, so everyone has an opportunity to shine. And as opposed to letting students pick their own groups, or even as opposed to randomizing. So there's definitely a reason to have homogeneous grouping or randomized grouping. And in this case, if you have your primary goal of supporting peer interactions and boosting and elevating student esteem, you're going to want to be really mindful about who is in a group with whom.
Okay. So this is sort of bringing to mind times where, I'll have certain students who don't have strengths that we have identified very clearly yet. I don't know how else to put this. Academically, they're not strong.
Hmm.
Maybe they're also kind of quiet and shy, so they don't have that sort of social stuff going on. And if you ask them, they would maybe even say, I don't have a lot of strengths. Put me with this guy. He's going to get all the answers right. So do you how do you make sure everyone shines if you're mixing and you're not just having the strongest students kind of shine on their own?
Hmm. So I think what we often go to is who are the kind students and who is
Mm,
going to be compassionate. And I don't know that that is going to boost the esteem. Just because someone is kind doesn't necessarily mean that my confidence is boosted.
mm,
So I might suggest front loading some information for students that might struggle, or you can arm them with really kind of having the key components. I like to also
okay.
do a huddle in a classroom. So if students are in different groups, you might say, okay, student number 4, and you know that student number 4 is the one who needs a confidence boost.
Mm,
Student number 4 in every group, come on over here. I have something to share. And so you just have a little huddle with one person from
okay.
each group. And then
Yeah.
they go back, and now they have information that everyone is
Yeah.
eager to have and
Okay.
is interested. And of course, they're curious, like, hey, what did the teacher tell you? And so
Right.
it's a really nice way to give them the stage, in a really positive way that the peers are dependent upon them.
Okay. Connie, I'm going to stop for just a second, and I'm
Sure.
not editing this out, but I'm just you one thing that I absolutely love about the stuff that you've already contributed, and I think this is one of your special gifts as an educator, is that you really know how to take literally a 5-second moment in a classroom and make it really make a huge difference. And I think the next thing you write needs to be a book about group work because there's so many things that go into good group work, and other people have done good work on it. But I feel like you've got some, I mean, that right there, that's a trick I've never heard of.
Well, thank you. I
And
made it
that's
up.
it's see, you need to start a Google Doc somewhere of like stuff you know about making group work go better. And then you can thank me in 3 years when that comes out in print. And
Okay. I will. You can write the foreword for me.
okay, I will.
Get that on record now.
I'm going to. Hey, I just did. Shavetta Miller just did one on graphic novels, and she did it because I said you have to write a book. Get in touch with Mark Barnes, and she's got this beautiful book now on graphic novels.
Oh,
So
I'm so excited. You know what
yeah,
else I use the huddle for? This is
what?
what I tell teachers. When you forget something, instead of stopping the whole damn class and saying, "Oh,
Oh
I missed
yes.
this copy," or "Oh, I forgot to hand you this," blah 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 blah. Instead of stopping everything, then you say, "Okay, person number 4, I need you."
Oh my,
And
because
then
it
you come.
takes 10
Mhm,
freaking minutes to get everybody's attention to
exactly.
do. Wow.
Huddle up. And
I
then you
love
then you
that.
say, "Okay, remember at the end I forgot to tell you this, da 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 da
Yeah.
da." So when your group gets to there, it's your responsibility to make sure that you fix my mistake,
Oh my
whatever.
gosh, that's genius.
I d
Yeah.
I did that
Start
in a
writing
P
these down.
I did that in a PD. That's how I came up with it,
That's
because I literally
perfect.
had to do it with adults,
Yeah.
and then I was like, "Oh, this would probably work with kids too."
Yeah.
So I lied and said I did it with kids.
Nice one. Okay,
Okay.
so this last one is just is looking for opportunities for students to have these positive peer interactions. And again, we're not just talking about like, you're great and you're great too, but have them doing things that actually build their respect from other students.
Exactly.
Okay.
Fisher and Fry talk about that interdependence, and that is
Mhm.
a really key piece of having quality group work. So, we don't want to assign kids to be the materials manager. So, in order to build their esteem, they have to contribute to the group in a valuable way.
Nice. Okay. So these are just three kind of general categories that, once a student is starting to build these and the teacher is really helping to facilitate that, that will enable them to start reaching toward those self-actualization goals.
Mhm. And what you said at the very beginning is still holds true. So it works. It is a hierarchy. So getting each of those needs fulfilled before you can move on to that next level. So self-actualization is pretty challenging to get to. Some people never get to it. They
Yeah.
sabotage themselves, and there's a
Yeah.
whole lot of bunch of articles about that as well. But yes, that self-actualization is, let me take the lead. I kind of looked at that when I was revisiting Maslow as, right, this is the lifelong learner that we all talk about.
Yeah.
I want to learn for the pure joy of learning.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're talking about here with that self-actualization.
And we can
And
talk
that's
that to death, right? We can keep
exactly
talking about it, but if they're still working on those deficiencies at the level below that, they're not going to care.
correct.
Yeah. Huh. So thank you for sharing all this. If people want to find you online, where should they go?
I am pretty active on Twitter, so at Connie Hamilton on Twitter. And I have a webpage that is hackingquestions.org.
Got it. Okay. And so people can go there and we're going to provide links to everything. People should go and look at your blog post because a lot of what we said, a lot of the stuff that you shared was only some of the specific strategies within each of those 3 different ideas. So there's more to see for every single one of those. And so people should definitely go and look at those ideas. That's it. Thank you so much. And you and I have already talked about you probably coming back and doing some other stuff for me later. So this is probably not your last time here.
Woohoo!
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. I really appreciate the opportunity.
To read Connie's blog post about this topic, which includes even more strategies you can use, visit cultofpedagogy.com, click podcast, and choose episode 172. To get a weekly email from me about my newest blog posts, podcast episodes, courses, and products, sign up for my mailing list at cultofpedagogy.com/subscribe. Thanks so much for listening and have a great day.